Landscaping owner rips my friend off for $400, so my friend makes him incur $15,000 in expenses. Posted by 3 Nations. Word of note, this is not me, but posting it up here for a friend who currently resides overseas. Long story, but worth the read. A while back, my friend was selling some stuff online, and among the items was a water heater. You know, the ones you see in every community hall and church kitchen. It was in working condition, and he threw it up online for $150, and he got an email from a person who runs a landscaping business saying he'll give him $100 cash today. Done. 2 weeks later, he got an email saying that it's not working. Weird. So my friend offered to give a full refund or cover repair cost if it's under $100. The guy instead sent an invoice for $400 saying the repairs had been done, and if my friend doesn't pay it in 48 hours, he'll send a debt collector after him. He paid it out of fear and emailed the confirmation. The landscaping owner then emailed back saying, "This is the price you sometimes have to pay when selling secondhand electronics," followed by a "Have a great day, don't let this hold you back," with a smiley face at the end of the email. A month later, my friend was in a bar and he overhears a girl talking about how her boss, who runs a landscaping firm, screwed over some dummy selling a water heater. My friend says, "Oh dang, I gotta hear this. Do you mind if I join your table?" And the girl said, "Well, sure," and told the story. Her boss had brought a busted water heater from a secondhand store for $25 and a working one for $100 and billed the seller for the repair for the busted one before he sold it on for $300 to some community group. My friend asked, "Who did this so I don't hire that guy to fix up my yard?" And everybody's just laughing all around. She says the company name, and lo and behold, it's on the email of the guy my friend sold the water heater to. He was the dummy in the story. He told me he was pretty angry about it, but COVID then hit, so he had other stuff to worry about. 18 months later, he was browsing the website he originally sold the water heater on, and he saw a bunch of landscaping materials: shovels, gardening stuff, wheelbarrows, lights for working at night, drills, nail guns, some construction materials, and a generator. Now, in my friend's location, apparently, if you're selling a generator, then you need to have a warrant of fitness for it, proving that it works, it's safe, there's no flayed wires, and so on and so on. Most people ignore it, and he saw that this generator is being sold by the landscaping firm. This generator, he said, just by looking at it, there was no way in heck it would have a warrant of fitness. Word of note, failure for a business to provide a warrant of fitness upon request for a generator after 2 weeks, when reported to the official departments and enforced by the court, the punishment is a hefty fine, and the courts often force the seller to refund the affected party and pay any costs that they incurred. evilplottingmusic.mp3. He talked to his flatmate, who agreed that they would go 50-50 on the generator, but he would transfer the money. Now, my friend had never met the landscaping firm owner face to face when selling the water heater because he left it outside and the pickup was confirmed via his security camera. And when he gets there, it was clear that the owner, this old grumpy looking man who enjoyed yelling at his employees, had emptied out his storage unit. The owner was very much, as it is, no refund, and the flatmate showed him the transfer confirmation and they take the generator for $800. No warrant of fitness provided. They then took it to a friend of theirs who's an electrician, and he agreed to check it and give an invoice for repairs. And to quote the friend, "It would be cheaper to buy a new generator, and to be honest, this generator, shouldn't have even been sold. It should have been scrapped." They'd also found that the main identifier number had been scratched off, but not a second number that is often recorded as well on the warrant of fitness for tracking purposes. So they got in contact with the seller, telling him the cost for repair, about $5,000. He promptly tells them that he's not paying, as it is no refund, to which they then asked, "Have you got the warrant of fitnesses for this generator?" Silence for 2 days. They followed up with another email asking for it. No response. They then ask again and get an email from him saying that he'll take it back for $800. They said, "No, we want the warrant of fitness," and they get no response. They emailed him every day for 2 weeks. Nothing. So they printed out the original item listing that had been screenshotted and had been archived on the website, and then they reported him to the website, and then the government. 4 months later, my friend is in court, and the guy went up to him. He tells him that he will take back the generator for $800, and that my friend and his flatmate will be going in to tell the judge that the seller has refunded them and that they want it all dropped. And that's what's happening here. Full stop, end of story. They are doing what they are told to do. My friend said no. So they went into the courtroom, and it's over very quickly. The inspector the government sent out to inspect the generator stated that it was in poor condition, shouldn't have ever been sold, was highly unsafe, and that the seller had tried to get the generator a warrant of fitness in early 2021, but instead had been told that it was to be repaired or scrapped and that it was not to be sold. They identified it by a second number on the generator that they took down in the original attempt to get it warrant of fitness, which had not been scratched out like the first. The judge ordered the landscaping firm owner to refund the flatmate the $800, pay the $5,000 for repairs to the generator, and was ordered to pay a $10,000 fine, which would be given directly to my friend's flatmate as the affected party. When they left the courtroom, the owner was furious, and he told them that under no uncertain terms that he was paying them a penny more and that he couldn't understand what he had done to deserve such treatment. To which my friend said, "Hey, remember the water heater?" He gave him a very confused look. "Yeah, remember that water heater that you bought for $100? Well, I do, because I sold it to you, and I know that you had a different one repaired and invoiced me for it." His jaw was on the floor, and to hit it home, he said, "It's a witch, isn't it? When what goes around comes around, especially when it accumulated interest. You have 48 hours to pay, or a debt collector will be contacted. Remember, this is the price you sometimes have to pay when selling secondhand electronics. Have a great day, don't let this hold you back." And they left. He paid the $15,000 2 days later. My friend and the flatmate split the $10,000 50-50 as they agreed with the combination of rent payments and study stuff. The generator they got repaired, and then got a warrant of fitness for it before selling it for $1,000 with a newly replaced identifier number. They then went out for a wonderful dinner and a night out in town. In short, old landscaping owner rips my friend off for $400, so my friend makes him incur $15,000 in expenses. I just did the math, and this is a 37.5 times stupid tax that landscaping owner paid. He thinks he's going to get away with it. He feels good for a while because you lay low, chill out, then you overhear a worker blab out. Look, landscaping guy probably had no idea that this worker was blabbing out this story that probably shouldn't even been told, blowing his cover. Dude hears in the right place at the right time. This all just falls apart so perfectly, and to top it off, OP's friend just has the genius plan to lay it all out, rip him up, and then get a huge payday from it. Way to go, OP's friend. Don't mess with an engineer, posted by Auklemon. I worked for a company that provides specialized equipment used in manufacturing. To protect my anonymity, I'll have to be vague about what exactly this machine does. During my time working in this field, I got to know many clients who would need these machines installed and serviced. One of these customers we'll call Jake. I later left the company for a different job, but Jake apparently kept my number. One afternoon, I got a call from Jake that they wanted a new unit installed and another unit needed maintenance and wanted to know if I was available. I let him know that I left the company, but that I could pass him on to someone who could help. He tells me he'll pay double my current rate to install the unit over the weekend. He lets me know that the company has increased the rates for installation and the company just can't afford it. The instructions they sent over just aren't clear enough, and their engineers are scratching their heads trying to figure it out. He begs me to consider it, and I agree. For more context, installing this unit can take a good few hours or up to a day on your own. The company gives you two options. You can either pay for an engineer to come and install it, or you can save money and they'll send instructions so the customer's own engineers can install it. The instructions, they aren't easy to follow, and it's company policy that if someone has started to install the equipment, the supplier wouldn't get involved since they couldn't verify that any of the pieces were broken. This will be important later. I drive down on the weekend and they show me the boxes of equipment. I set to work and I make good progress installing the unit. Around 6 hours in, and I'm stopped by Jake, who greets me. I let him know that I'm nearly finished, and he tells me, Hey, sorry, but they just don't have the budget to pay you. He understands my frustration, but his engineers can take it from here. To say that I was frustrated was an understatement. I wanted revenge. There's a small button inside the unit that changes the unit into test mode. This is done to perform maintenance on the unit, but it's impossible to configure the unit with this button pressed. It's only possible to reach this button using a pin, so it's not easily pressed during installation. Because of this, the installation instructions don't mention it. There's no real way of telling the equipment is in test mode, it just won't work normally. I think you can see where this is going. I click the button, collect my things, and leave. Monday morning, I get a call from Jake. I declined. I knew my old company wouldn't get involved since I already started installing the unit. I knew his engineers would never figure it out. I just had to let him stew. A few days later, with many missed calls, I finally pick up. Jake is furious. He asks me where the heck I've been and why I haven't been picking up the phone. He tells me they can't figure it out how to configure the machine and they need my help. I tell him, hey, why is this my problem? You won't pay me. He told me he was sorry and they would work something out if I could get there as soon as possible. I told him, oh no, you're going to have to pay me 7,000 pounds up front before I do anything. I'd never felt this powerful before. He screamed at me for a bit and hung up. He called back a day later after saying he's sorry for how he acted and said that if I could come fix it, he would pay me in a totally defeated tone. He tried to fight it, saying that he'll pay when I was done, but I was having none of it. After a bit of back and forth, he agrees to pay me. The money hit my account and I came in the next day. The look of confusion over his face when I took out a pen and changed the unit from test mode was priceless. It was even more priceless seeing his reaction to me packing up my tools and leaving after only 20 minutes of configuring. Easiest 7,000 pounds I'd ever made. Don't try to mess with the professional problem solver. I just love how he engineered, pun absolutely intended, a solution here, and it's funny because this is great ProRevenge. Not only did he just completely get the guy who was messing him over, he went in and did it with style, finesse, and fashion, just boop, done, and just dropping jaws on the floor. The dude never expected, never saw it coming, thought he was getting a complicated, convoluted fix, and then OP just comes in and wrecks everything. Way to go, OP. Enjoy that 7K. You should always pay your accountant, especially if you got skeletons in your closet. Posted by Reddit admin Dumb87. My buddy is an accountant. He has his own firm. His biggest clients are small to medium-sized businesses. Well, he had a client who owned 4 different clubs and bars in 2 different cities. Client was always shady, always slow on payments and so on, and I was also a customer of one of the bars. They had poker games that I would play in on Thursdays. Well, one day I'm at my buddy's house having a few beers and he's whining about non-payment from a client. I ask who and well, he doesn't want to say. But it's really bugging him because it's a significant chunk of change. He then says the name. We'll call him Scott. I'm like, wow, Scott isn't paying you. And then he says Scott's saying business is way down. And I think that's odd. I've been going to Scott's place and every Thursday is packed. My buddy looks at me and goes, really? I go, yeah, he does this new cash discount thing, 15% off of your tab if you pay cash. My buddy goes, really? I tell him about my experience at Scott's bar, and eventually the topic changes. A few weeks later, my buddy calls me up and says, hey, you going to Scott's bar to play poker? I said, yeah. And he says, can I join? And I go, well, sure. He joins, we get a few drinks in us, lose our money at poker. My house is closer, so he decides to crash there. On the way over, he breaks down his theory. He thinks Scott is vastly underreporting his revenue. The reason why he suspects Scott is offering cash discounts is because cash is easier to hide. He says he's going to do a deep dive on Scott's finances. My friend tells me his plan is to go to all 4 of Scott's establishments, get the prices he charges at each place, pieces together how much alcohol he's buying versus how much Scott is saying the revenue equates to. He looks up how much Scott is paying in payroll, rent, bills, and so on. Keep in mind, he has access to all this info, and he determines that Scott is basically using his credit card receipts plus a little bit of cash to cover his cost of his business to include rent, payroll, insurance, liquor, food, and so on. However, based upon the amount of products he's selling, he's suspecting Scott is underreporting his total income by about 35 to 40%. He goes back into Scott's books even more, and he figures in the last year, Scott has been underreporting his sales by 35 to 40%, but he's also been underreporting his sales by at least 20 to 25% for years on end. Simply put, there is no way Scott is going through as much product and as much alcohol as he's purchasing and having the revenue numbers that he's claiming. He's underreporting his sales to his accountant, which means he's also underreporting his earnings to the IRS. By this point, Scott owes my friend thousands of dollars that he hasn't paid. He said his total amount owed could buy a brand new motorcycle. He never gave me an exact number. My friend decides, screw getting repayment from Scott, let's get repayment from the IRS through the whistleblower program. He's estimating Scott's underreported his revenue by millions of dollars over the course of years. The whistleblower fees that he'd earned from the IRS far outweigh the amount Scott owes him. The IRS will pay between 15 to 30% of what they collect. So, with the assistance of a lawyer, my friend gathers all the evidence he has of Scott's underreporting to the IRS and files a whistleblower report with the IRS. During this time, my friend fires Scott as a client for non-payment. Now this part gets boring because there's a lot of legal wrangling back and forth, but however, eventually the IRS comes down on Scott and they come down hard. It's estimated that Scott underreported his income to the IRS by about $4.5 million. Now, my friend never told me how much the IRS was able to recoup, but Scott's businesses are no longer his businesses, and $4.5 million would put the whistleblower reward at $675K to $1.3 million. Keep in mind, it's based on what the IRS collects, not the amount that's reported. I've asked my friend how much he got in the end, and he simply says, I no longer have a mortgage, and it would have been much cheaper for Scott to just pay me. Oh, you go off and you mess with like reporting your income and revenue, not just for your own personal taxes, but for the business and your items that you bring in and sell and your employees and payroll. You're just not doing one layer. You're doing multiple layer of tax evasion and underreporting. That's going to come back to bite you, as it did with Scott here. I think the moral of this story is do not be Scott at all, like ever, for any reason at all. Way to go, OP. I nuked my liar boss for a $10 million loss. Click the next video on your screen so you don't miss this insane story, and I'll see you there.